Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ADP report and the 10-minute trades trade room. My name is Lee Goldstein. I'm the trading director at 10-minute trades. Please remember that all the trades we take are for educational purposes. It is possible to lose money trading futures, so trade carefully. All right, good morning, everyone. So it's always the big question because of the way the markets are behaving right now. The big question is this: Can we survive the setup between the time our orders are put on the chart and the news comes out? So what do I mean by that? If you look at last month's ADP, which was very, very unusual, it was not normal. It was not a normal trade at all. It was the first time I can ever remember that the news was significantly late. And I had two setups. We were trading our normal gold setup with a little bit bigger bracket, which is one way of trying to deal with not getting filled before the news comes out, and a little bit bigger stop as well. And what happened was, and we also had an NQ set up, a test on the NQ, not live. And let me show you what happened. So when we got to the room, gold was actually similar somewhat to the way it's been behaving today. In terms of the amount of movement it had from the previous evening. In fact, it was a little bit more volatile than today's gold. So ADP is an important report. I think the market waits for this report and then it goes back on its merry old way. But last month, so here's what happened. We had I believe I used an 8-tick bracket instead of 6 on gold, and maybe let's say 10. Okay, I went to 10. 10 instead of 6. So let's see what happens. So before the news, there was a little bit of a nerve-wracking whippy candle. But the bracket of 6 was safe. The standard bracket, as if we were in markets 10 years ago with a bracket of 6, or last year, I should say, looks safe. But we got a fill that you don't want to see. And it was filled almost 30 seconds after the order, after 8:15. Officially, I mean, if you go by the DMM, officially, that was a canceled trade because the cancellation is 15 seconds on the ADP report. But I would not cancel that trade. I would just wait for the news to come out. As long as I'm not filled early, I would want to wait for the news to come out. I wouldn't want to cancel the trade. Okay. Just as a matter of policy. I wouldn't cancel the ADP. I'd wait for the news. And that's what we did. So watch what happened. It was very nerve-wracking. And it was an extremely difficult trade to manage because it was so unusual also. It was unexpected. So the NQ didn't move at all initially. Now the news isn't out yet, so you don't really, not surprised there's no move yet. Now the NQ, we used a 15 bracket. So it filled 24 seconds after the hour. and it filled, one of the worst types of fills that we experience. It's a fill that touches the end of the bracket, so it fills you at the worst possible place and doesn't move, and then pulls back and looks pretty much like it's just going to reverse and stop us out, which is a very common behavior of that type of a fill. The NQ didn't fill for a full minute, but it worked. The NQ worked. And we've tested the NQ on this report. It's a little bit uneven. It's not necessarily a setup that I would, that I'm 100% confident in. Gold had the strangest reaction last month. Very slow. I tried to expand my target because it looked like it was going to burst down. And it really just didn't give you much of an opportunity for very much profit until eventually. Then it moved down and we made 14 ticks. Well, probably 7 ticks on 2 contracts. So it winding up okay, but it was very weird. It was very weird. I don't expect that to happen again. It was extremely unusual. I don't expect that type of behavior again. The month before, I was with my son who had surgery, so I don't have a live trade room, but I have the replay. It was a winner, and I replayed also with a 6 bracket. So the clock you're watching is the clock up here. I was looking at the ZB also, but I wouldn't probably trade the ZB on this report. So here's the 8:14, 57 seconds. And it shot up, and that looked like a nice winner 2 months ago. Quick reversals. This report's been reversing pretty quickly, so you might not have gotten that 3rd target, but you should have gotten the first 2. So it was a winner. ZB didn't really do much. Not initially. Not initially. So the question today. The question today is, can we use a completely normal setup, right? Can we use a completely normal setup? Should we increase the bracket a little bit? Is the market going to calm down before the report? So those are the thoughts that you have, right? Those are the thoughts. Obviously, I know the gold open is at 820. Nothing, in my opinion, gold's going to make its first move. There will be a move at 815 on this report, and there might also be a gold open trade. I'm not planning on trading the gold open because it's too close to this report. But for full disclosure, I do have tick strike open on my side monitor. Okay. Also, because there's a 830 GDP, a 3rd data set of US GDP, and so we want to maybe set up an after the news trade for that. There's no DMM for that report. So my setup, my initial setup, and this is a family money trade because the trade, even with difficult markets, has been working. But just be heads up. This is a high risk market because there's so many unknowns in terms of market behavior. We just don't know how things are going to behave. And it's not our fault. We didn't do anything to deserve this, right? We didn't deserve these markets. So just for a heads up, I have an NQ trade set up. Let's say that gold all of a sudden became crazy volatile and untradeable. I have a secondary NQ trade set up, 2 contracts with a bracket of 15, okay, and a target of 17 and 35 with a stop of 35 and an entry of 814.59. That's an emergency NQ trade, okay? Normally I trade gold on this report. If something should happen and gold seems untradeable, I'd be willing to give the NQ a shot, but I'm not putting the trade on, okay? It's not on. If I need to put it on, I can put it on, okay? My gold trade, so the biggest decision in question is, if you look at gold over the 30-minute chart, it went up at the end of the day yesterday. And then overnight, you can see what it did overnight. Here is midnight. Here is pre-midnight. Pre-midnight, it started moving up, and it's been selling off overnight until 5:30, 5 o'clock or so. It's been upward since for the last couple hours. 2 hours or so, gold's been retracing, heading back to the high, it looks like, okay? But when you see that gold is $11 of volatility, considering that we've come into the room and we've seen $25 of volatility on gold, we've seen some significant volatility. Gold is, last month when we got to the room, gold had more movement than it does today. So I like that. Now I'm just checking my gold bracket. That's all I'm doing. I'm in sim. Okay, so that bracket's okay. So, my gut feeling is a bracket of 6 is really small in these markets. It just is really small. Think about this. If you make your bracket 10, it might give us a little more protection. If the market only moves 7 ticks, or if it does what it did last month, the bracket could cost you a loser of a trade rather than a winner. That's what a bigger bracket can do. It can make a trade that might have been a small winner if it just moves a few ticks. It could make it not a winner because you won't get filled as soon. But maybe you'll survive a move before the news if there is one. Very often there isn't one. So it's a difficult decision whether or not to increase the bracket size. I'm tempted to increase it a little bit just because 6 is so small. And the difference between an 8 and a 10, if we get a decent move, and a fairly normal trade, then the bracket size doesn't matter. Bracket size matters when you don't have a good move, okay? That's when the bracket size is problematic. That's when the bracket size is problematic. So my gut feeling, look, last month we used a bracket of 10. I think I'm going to go with the same bracket size, and that's my gut feeling. Slightly bigger bracket, because I think it'll keep us able to weather um, an early move if it's a couple of seconds early. Look, if it's a huge move early, nothing's going to protect you from that anyway. But you could just get a random movement in these markets where 6 ticks isn't that much. It might just fill you because the market just has a random little move. So that's my gut feeling. That's my gut feeling. My setup. So I'm thinking maybe I'm going to use a bracket of 9 right now. I've got two positions. I'm going to trade 3, 2 for 7. No, you know what I'm going to do? We might get us. What if we get a good move? I don't want to cripple myself and not have at least get part of the good move. So one target of 7, 115, 129. Okay. Or I'll tell you what I'm going to do. The DMM 7 and 13. This trade's been very reverse oriented. 7, 13, and 29 are my targets. The stop 14. Entry time 8, 14, 59. It's a breakout trade. The normal bracket is 6, Calvin. Yeah, I've increased the stop a little bit, Chantal. I increased the bracket. I increased the stop a little bit. So let me just, I want to make it, I agree with Chantal. So the stop, I'm going to add 3 because I'm adding 3 to the bracket. Okay. And I want to watch the market. Let's watch the market. My NQ setup just, and I'm also going to set up a third gold trade for maybe after the 8:30 news. Not sure what I'm going to do if I'm going to trade that report, to be honest. Okay. I'm going to have a third gold set up similar to the way I trade the open, just to have a trade on the board. I'm not saying I'm even going to trade it. I want to watch the market. And it's going to be a squeeze play. Okay. So I just have a gold squeeze play with a target of 9 and a target of 20 with a stop of 22. But I'm not even saying I'm trading that. I just want a trade on the board. I want a trade on the board so that if I want to trade that 8:30 report, I have the possibility of doing it. Not sure what I want to do with that report. And I think I only, because it's really an unknown, that report. I'm just trading one contract on that with a target of like 30 ticks. So if there's a move, I can trail. So it's just it's a squeeze play. And when I trade the squeeze play, I set a range, but I'm not using the range. So understand that. But my ticks above the range are 2. My ticks below the range are 2. My graphics are shown on the chart. But I'm not planning on entering. I'm planning, if I do anything, it would be a manual entry. And that's only if I did anything. This is just to have a setup on the board in case I want to trade one gold contract after the 8:30 news. Okay. So I'm labeling it GDP. Okay. And we might have a couple of minutes. So my ADP regular trade is right here. My GDP is a squeeze, okay? It's a squeeze. So I'm not going to put that on, but that's what it looks like. It has the buttons. I don't need to put that on until after, I'm just concentrating on ADP. And I am tempted to use a smaller bracket on ADP. Gold is not crazy right now. It's not crazy. Let's check our time sync. I check my time sync by going to the website time.is. Grain is tomorrow. Yes, Josh. Yes, sir. Grains are tomorrow. 11:30 trade room. So I'm thinking we don't need as big a bracket this morning on ADP. So these are tense trades, These are tense trades. And I do want to thank everybody. There's a lot of folks watching us on YouTube. How about a couple of likes on YouTube? Hit that like button. Join the channel and hit the notification bell so you know the next time we're streaming. You can watch us trade the jobs report Friday. So this morning I'm only trading gold, but I have an NQ trade set up. If for some reason gold doesn't look tradable, gold looks fine right now. Looks like it's going to be perfectly tradable. So they're expecting about 400. They're expecting 450,000 jobs to be added to the payrolls. I think it's going to be positive news. I think the number is going to be higher. The job numbers have been steadily better and better overall, the big reports. They don't always move the markets the way we expect them to, but the reports have been better. The reports have been good. So I'm going to stay in the room at least through the 8:30 trade. And then I'm not trading the oil open this morning because it's oil inventory day. Although we do think it may not matter anymore. In the old days, it used to matter. So the big question is, are we going to just keep the trade room open through oil because we want to continue testing the NQ open the way we've been doing it? And that starts at 9 o'clock. So we'll play it by ear. Okay. We don't have to decide now. You can leave and come back. It's not a problem. It's really more of an issue for me than anybody else, whether the room is open or closed, or I have time to, you know what I mean. So NQ is, all the markets are volatile, but the indexes right now are more volatile. So neither index, you understand why these markets are tough, right, folks? No one would, what's the word? I think gold looks like it wants to test the high. The NQ, very, very jumpy right now. I agree with Calvin. If I was going to, that NQ should probably be a 20 bracket, right? Gold looks like it wants to test the high, independent of the ADP report. So what would I like to see? A really terrible report that pushes gold to the upside. Normally, a very mediocre report would push gold to the upside. That would be the normal expected behavior. So with gold bursting, it would be great to see a worse than expected report that pushes gold to the new high. But I'd like it to wait and not do it right now. Right, Mark, I know you're long. I think there's going to be a burst to the upside no matter what, regardless of the news. Now, I don't know. I mean, I'm not necessarily right about that. So, again, no response to the news. So, I don't know if this should be canceled. It's a very matching type report. I mean, theoretically, the report should be canceled, but it's going to burst. I would cancel. I left it because I think it's going to burst to the new high. That's what I think. I think it's going to burst to the new high. If it doesn't, I'm going to get stopped. It filled one of my orders. I just want out of this. Okay, so oh my Lord. I took my profit at the new high. I can't take it anymore. I cannot take it anymore. I cannot take it anymore, folks. This is my last moment. I'm retiring as of now. You could say goodbye to me. I quit. I've had enough. All right, let's get ready for 8:30. It did what I thought it was going to do, and I had no faith in my own analysis. We got 9 ticks, a total of 9 ticks. Okay, let's get ready for 8:30. Let's get ready for 8:30. Patience is right. Patience is right. ADP, $90. Punch me because it could have been 600. Okay. I want to thank everybody on YouTube. Chantal, why don't we let YouTube folks can stay through the GDP news? So YouTube, we're going to keep the room open for you till the GDP news. I can get rid of my NQ because I'm not trading. Now the NQ had a setup. The NQ setup was a test of the low. It was a magnet trade setup that the NQ had. Okay. The NQ absolutely had a trade. Now, I don't know this GDP report. We've tested these GDP reports to see if they would have a consistent, reliable trade that we could take. And they don't. The quarterly US GDP reports have been unbelievably difficult to trade with a breakout, with a standard breakout trade. They have whipped all over the place and just been impossible to trade. So that's why I'm setting up a one contract gold trade, like I said before, with a reasonably sized target. I'm not interested in trading at the time of the news. Okay. I don't need my ADP set up. Okay. So I have a squeeze play set up. There could be a move in gold after the GDP report comes out. Okay. Am I going to jump into it and trade it? Not, I can't tell you. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I am going to use now, gold is opening right now. So I'm watching gold open with tick strike like we do most mornings. But I haven't analyzed gold properly to trade the gold open this morning. Look, it was bullish before ADP, but I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared to trade the gold open right now. I suppose you could take whatever signal you get, but I'm waiting for the 8:30 report before I trade gold. Now, it doesn't mean there won't be a good gold open move. There could still be one. It's open now. It's open now. But and it looks like it's opening to the downside. Calvin, the comment I would make about no response on the NQ is that the NQ started its move at 8 o'clock before ADP. It didn't really move on ADP as much as but it started it had just had a downward move that my guess is there might have been some signals, but it was a trade to test the low. That was the NQ setup. Not so much an ADP trade, but a trade to test the low. Now, see, I think gold is waiting for the GDP news. You know, it had a move. It had a move on ADP. Okay. It had a move on ADP. Very, very strange. Two very, very strange ADP reports in a row. That's all we can say. Two really strange reports. My gold setup. Okay. My gold setup. And maybe it makes sense. Well, so I'm going to trade one position and I have basically a runner type target. In other words, if I got in a trade and it moves in my direction, my goal would be to trail my stop upwards to a 30 tick target. My stop is 22. With a squeeze play, essentially, I would just be entering immediately into the market if I felt that I had signals that are telling me to enter and trade. Okay. The way that the squeeze play works is it creates a range. Generally, using tick strike, there will be a definitive direction. It'll either be long or short after the news. And I would use the long or short button, which puts me in the market immediately using my targets and stops. The long button, the one click range entry button, puts orders on both sides of the market. Not for an immediate entry, but for an entry above or below the range. The one click range long button puts an order at the top line for a long button above the range. The one click range short button puts an order at the bottom line, waiting for an entry when the range gets broken to the downside. So there's a couple of different, you can wait for the market to come to you, or you can enter immediately if you feel like you have a trade. So yesterday's CB consumer confidence did a very similar thing to me on the trap trade with the strange later movement when I'd already exited the trade for a small profit. Now this ADP report, I can only say it was so strange. I just got out, took a profit, and a second later, it looked like it moved 30 more ticks. That's just a little bit of bad luck. Now, some people like to trade before news. Because there were a lot of signals before the ADP news, but we have a specific DNA, a specific style of trading. Okay. We have a very specific way that we trade. Yeah, ADP was 455. It was a little bit better than normal. Not incredible, not an incredible difference. I would consider that a very small difference on that ADP news. And gold bursting up, you have to really understand that it probably had nothing to do with the news. I really don't think it was necessarily even news related. So really what I'm doing here is I'm watching to see what happens on this 830 GDP. I think there will be a big move in the NQ. I think you can trade the NQ on GDP news with a setup with a big fat bracket, right? Like just for fun. Now, this is not something I've tested, so I want to tell you that honestly, untested, but it's GDP news. So I would put it like an 18 bracket on, a target of 15 and 40 with a stop of 40. Got to have a big stop. And my entry time would be 8:29, 59. It would be a breakout. NQ, and I'm not doing this live, just so everybody understands, but I believe the NQ will move on GDP news. I do believe it will move on GDP news. So we'll see. So none of my trades, my gold trade is not automatic on GDP news. And I may just watch because this is not something I've done on this report previously. And it's want to see what happens. I think there will be a move, and I'm a little bit surprised. Never mind on that. I think there's going to be a move. I think there's going to be a move. So we got a minute before ADP, before GDP. I mean, GDP news, even this is the final GDP. It's the third report. It's revised data twice. It's been revised twice. You have advanced GDP is the second report, and what's the first one called? Now I'm drawing a blank. It's preliminary. Preliminary GDP is the bigger of the GDP reports, and that was weeks ago. But the markets are absolutely looking at these reports. These GDP reports are moving the markets. So watch. I think you're going to see the NQ move pretty dramatically on this news and gold. I think both. Now, look, I could be, the way. So there's the NQ. It went through it. It hits the first target. And the data is not even out. So what are you going to do? The data wasn't out on the NQ. I can put my trade back on. So the news is late. Another strange news report with late news. It's out. It's lower than expected. Lower than expected. Lower than expected is good news. So I'm not surprised the NQ popped up. No response from gold, which is very surprising. Very surprising in my opinion. No immediate response. NQ, I think the NQ will push up and hit both its targets. That's my gut feeling. You never know with these markets. There is a downward trend on the NQ. And all the news is being it's dribbling out. It's not all out either. So very difficult to trade when all the news doesn't come out at once. Not a normal, not a normal GDP report. Okay. Not normal. So I would not trade it now because the news came out so haphazardly. I wouldn't trade it. Now it's out. Now it's out. And it's still a little bit lower. Both readings agree. I still think the NQ should go up and hit at least the first target because that would be considered good news. The problem with the NQ is it's on a pretty strong downward trend this morning, but it is GDP news. The gold trade, I'm not trading gold anymore this morning. I'm done with ADP. I had bad luck. Not bad luck. I had impatience. Okay. NASDAQ is doing what I said. I think it's going to hit that second target. And I was only just thinking, I had not done any testing on this report. Okay. But just going on the way the markets have been moving, I'm going to close this out. All right. So I'm closing out. I want to thank everybody on YouTube. Thanks everybody on YouTube for watching. Let me show you a way you can join our trade room. If you want to learn how to trade the way we do this, take part in our trade rooms live with no delay. www.jointhetraderoom.com. It's a very, very good deal to come join and trade with us in the trade room. We'd love to see you. So definitely join up with us. It's only $97 a month. So thanks everybody on YouTube for watching. www.jointhetraderoom.com. NQ Trade.